Interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Chizito. On Spectrum, tonight we're going to review the week. Some of the things we'll be looking at. The Entebbe municipality, where DP won almost overwhelmingly, 13,000 votes against 6,000 for the next challenger. The oil debate, MPs are still waiting for a response from the Speaker concerning a petition to recall Parliament. Basaja Banalaba compensation. He says if you can give him the markets and the city square to build a shopping mall there and other things, he'll give the money gladly back. And other issues, sugar, of course. The cheats seem to be back. Cheats, the way we used to know them in the 80s, seem to be back. But the President has said no more cheat. No government officials dealing in sugar, but one minister, General Tafiri, says no way. We'll be looking at those and other issues. Our guests tonight, Honorable Mike Sebalu, Ugandan representative to the East African Legislative Assembly, also a member of the NRM's NEC. You're most welcome, Honorable Sebalu.
Thank you very much, Edmond. I bring you greetings from the East African community. Actually, today we just had an orientation workshop for members of the 9th Parliament, which was very successful, and many participants came across the region. So allow me to take this opportunity to thank all those that attended, and for the very insightful and very constructive debate that we had. And special thanks go to Trademark East Africa that sponsored the workshop, and the Speaker Parliament and all other participants.
We also have, of course, we look forward to hearing your views, Honorable Sebalu. We have not had you here for a little bit of time, couple of weeks. We also are joined by Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL. You're most welcome, Mr. Opiyo.
Thank you very much, Edmond, and good evening to all the listeners, and hello to those who are viewing us online.
Right, we've also not had you for a little while.
Yeah, I've been out of town for a while, but I'm glad to be back temporarily, though, because I leave the country again to on Sunday.
All right.
Yeah. I'm more interested in his bank balance.
Off the record, we'll talk about this mainly. We also expect to be joined by Honorable Norbert, Deputy Democratic Party President.
Oh, I thought there were some changes that had not.
President of the DP. Let's talk about Entebbe. Yeah. Honorable Mike Sebalu, the opposition took Entebbe, the constituency where the president lives. Muhammad Kauma retained the municipality's seat after beating Patience Mubangizi of the NRM. But Mubangizi is contesting these results, saying she was rigged out. Several MPs, mostly NRM, have lost their seats recently. Do you think that the opposition can build on this victory in subsequent by-elections and local council elections? Or do you think this is a one-off?
I would think it is a one-off, because the trend clearly appears to be in favor of those that have been removed, because there are many NRMs that have been removed, and they are likely to retain their seats. And even in this case, Kauma was removed and Kauma has retained the seat. There is this tendency that is developing where the voters may want to retain their position in a given manner. And when you look at Entebbe, definitely you know, and everyone will appreciate that there is quite a good presence of DP, which shouldn't really surprise someone if they've organized themselves. And when you look at those NRM areas where members have been removed, you find that even some have been removed by independents who are NRM leaning. So the chances of NRM retaining those seats are high. So I really don't want to use the Entebbe victory or confirmation of earlier electoral results to mean that it will create overturns in NRM-dominated and supported areas. So it is a question of how one galvanizes their support. Because some of the petitions actually, when you look at them, like there is a petition which is very interesting in Ruero. Someone was removed for having given 50,000 to repair a borehole. Now, that kind of disqualification, to me,
it won't change the results.
It may not change. It may even increase the margin,
right?
Because the people may interpret and say, "Look, someone is being victimized for giving us water." Because even then, the difference between the person who petitioned and the winner, it was a difference of more than 30,000. And the issue is, you gave us money for a borehole. So some of these things really, to the ordinary people, it may even strengthen their resolve to ensure that they take back someone that they had given the votes before. So
especially where it's given a borehole, where there's no borehole.
yeah. So basically, that is my take on that.
So do you think we are having many frivolous grounds for petitions? Do you think?
Yeah. Actually, when you look, he's a lawyer. He will tell you some of the petitions, some of the cases, and the grounds really are such that they may go to court and reverse a given position, but to the people, they may even create more resolve for people to prove their case beyond any reasonable doubt.
Mr. Nicholas Opiyo.
You see, in many democracies, midterm elections are supposed to be a referendum on the performance of the ruling party. You know, in the U.S., you know, if you have midterm elections, the performance in the election reflect the current trend or the feelings of people about the ruling party. Same thing in the UK and indeed in many countries. But I don't think that's the true sense in Uganda, because if that was really the true picture, any re-election would be, if you like, a midterm election, and would be a referendum on the performance of the NRM. Unfortunately, our democracy hasn't reached that standard. And I can tell you why. Precisely because the masses in this country are still largely illiterate, don't care about issues of governance. You can see by the voting trends, very few of them turn up to vote. People just don't seem to care about government. They live in spite of government, not because of government. So I think that in that sense, elections may not necessarily reflect people's attitudes towards a sitting or ruling party.
Actually, just to augment the point my brother is raising, I was on radio last night and I was listening to the results being announced. You could hear a certain polling station where the registered voters are 1,000, and 1,000 ballots were delivered. Those that were used were 300, and used 700.
Exactly.
So it just goes to clearly show what the point is raising.
Yeah. So there's voter despair about the our electoral processes, because they're not fair at all. They don't reflect people's wishes. Because if that was the case, then elections would have been an indictment on NRM's failure or inadequacy in addressing the current economic crisis. Then there could have been a resounding rejection of the NRM candidate. But that doesn't seem to be the trend. People vote irrespective of what the government is doing. And secondly, will this be a trend changer? I don't think so. It will not be a trend changer. I think the terrain or the contours will remain the same. The NRM will still have a stronghold. The opposition will still have a stronghold, because traditionally we know it that the movement does not perform well in urban areas. In where the elitist people who understand policy, people who understand government actions and relate them to their daily lives. So I think that is not going to change.
Not necessarily. That idea of people who understand doesn't apply, because even when you go to those very areas, actually the people who understand don't turn up. If you look at Kampala, the people in Korowa and Nakasero, you find the voting is in Owuno, is in Nakasero. So I think they are more politically agitated and more. But when you take it to the level of understanding, it may be another.
But it's a different world where many times they've enlightened and more critical.
But again, the most important point that I do want to make in this, in this regard, is again, the infighting in the opposition being seen in Entebbe. Ordinarily you would think that an opposition facing a common enemy, in quotes, I'm not saying the enemies, would unite and have one candidate, and still you see that they have failed to actually coalesce, around one idea, around one candidate. So because of that.
But you see, my brother, when you have, there are cases where when you have a very strong opponent, common enemy, and is overwhelming, you you start now fighting for space amongst yourself, other than getting space from the other one.
That's what I think is unfortunate, because I think that the opposition needs to begin to have a common ground, a common approach, a common response to the weaknesses of the movement.
That's saying the FDC should have left the DP court.
Well, I think so, because all of us know that that's a DP stronghold. A DP candidate was always going to win that constituency. I mean, so FDC and all the others who actually had candidates were actually wasting their time.
But you know, are very clear. FDC had a certain number in Parliament, which it still wants to achieve. Well, and the chances are that it needs to look at these areas also.
Well, they've got a bloody nose. And I think the last point I want to make on this is the question of the law. How ridiculous the law is.
Yes.
Somebody is found guilty of electoral malpractice. The same person is allowed to stand again. I think that's the most ridiculous thing in this country, and needs to change urgently. Somebody who is found guilty of committing electoral offences must be stopped from contesting elections, at least for a particular number of years, because that then will ensure that people do not behave better in elections. But lastly, on the grounds of petition, I do think that the grounds in the petition is really a question of judicial decision. I mean, depending on the evidence raised, we cannot on this radio begin to say that the grounds are flimsy. The laws allow for certain grounds. The courts have found them actually, adequate, and have annulled elections, and we ought to respect that, I think.
Let's move forward. The oil debate.
Yeah, and I think what we're raising is we're not disputing the verdict of the court, but I think we can factually say that some of them actually, because there are those that you really feel weighted, even from the word go, and you really feel that one is, but there are those that are lukewarm in a way, but definitely at the end of the day, a decision has to be taken by a competent authority, and once it is taken, it has to be respected.
Honorable Sebalu, let's look at the oil debate. MPs are still waiting for a response from Speaker Rebecca Kataga. They gave her the grounds for their petition, their request to recall Parliament as an emergency. Where do you think this is going? The Speaker seems to be hesitant to call these people back.
By the way, this is a very interesting development, and the way I see it proceeding, it may require a constitutional interpretation at some point, or even a constitutional amendment. The way, because it is very interesting. The way the provision is at the moment is such that once you get the 130, then it is not even may.
They have to.
You shall.
Yes.
But the Speaker raised some interesting points that need to be considered in the interest, in the bigger, looking at the bigger picture, that having a provision of that nature without any qualification is also something that can be potentially
so in the future they might want to.
So the way I look at it, to sort out this impasse at some point, some level of clarity needs to be made around this.
But
that is not what I'm saying. I think you need to appreciate the point I'm raising. I'm saying that the way it is now, she's got no choice but to call Parliament.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying that this precedent may require that provision is re-examined in the way it is applied. Because if we are 130, we just sit somewhere and say, look, why don't we go back?
130 is a simple fact. It's not a simple thing anyway.
No,
you can't just get them out. Sometimes they fail to raise quorum.
Yeah, I know that is it. But the chances that it can also be raised with ease, it depends on what. So what I'm saying, I'm not disputing the provision the way it is, and I appreciate it. I wasn't here as a member of
responsible.
And I'm responsible. And I'm saying it because you see, it was, at times certain provisions are made to deal with certain situations, because the input of this is to ensure that if there is such an issue that needs to be attended to at a given time, someone should not have an excuse, and that is what it is. But now what the argument that is coming is that when you leave it like that at all times, and there are possibilities of it being abused, now that is the kind of debate. But the way it is in the Constitution, very clear, shall and you don't have to. It's not may, it is shall, it's mandatory.
Right.
And in the manner, the way these people proceeded, they proceeded according to the provisions of the Constitution, and the way it provides is such that once you get that number, they went even beyond that number.
True.
So it creates, but I think it creates opportunity for the legal minds should need should have some time to look at it on either side.
Well, maybe wait until it happens maybe 10 times or 3 times or whatever. Wait until it becomes a crisis.
Oh, yeah, well,
Edmond, I think the debate that the provision is subject to disabuse is a valid one, but to make it now would be diversionary.
It needs to be done in its own merit,
at its own time,
so that it doesn't disadvantage anyone.
So the question now is, what is happening with the Speaker of Parliament? Quite honestly, I think she's playing politics.
Right.
I don't think she is reading the law the way it's supposed to be. She's quite honestly just playing politics, because the law is very clear. Once the numbers have been got, she has to call Parliament to discuss the issue. And I think she needs to stop doing that and begin to look at the interests of, because essentially Parliament represents the people of this country.
Yes.
There's a general concern among the population about this whole oil debate, oil secrecy and stuff like that. And I think the Speaker needs to be responsive to that and begin to be a bit more sensitive. Now, secondly, in a very long time, we have never seen a bipartisan motion of this nature.
Right.
For the first time in a very long time, you have the movement MPs
and the opposition
sitting together agreeing on something, and I think that in itself is significant.
Actually, it is a surprise, because the total opposition in Parliament is 58.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you have
more than 100
something.
NRM.
So you see more
NRM.
Yeah. So that is an interesting development.
Yeah. So I think we need to be responsible to that. And then secondly, I think that it is not the job of the Speaker to translate, to interpret the law. That's the work of the court.
Right.
If the Speaker thinks that the law is being abused, she has to go to court. She cannot call a press conference and interpret the law.
Right.
Then thirdly,
isn't she supposed to guide on matters of the law?
She's supposed
to
guide.
Even within the house, even in the house, she guides.
She guides, but she cannot interpret the law.
I would suppose
the duty of interpretation is that of court.
I would suppose that what she was doing was giving guidance as the leader of the institution.
Well, then the third thing, which I think is absurd, is the question that people's representatives in Parliament cannot access public documents, cannot access. The Speaker is saying they must take an oath of secrecy. My argument has been that this agreement is between the government of Uganda and Talo Oil.
Yes.
Talo Oil subscribers have had access to what this agreement contains.
Yes.
Why can't the subscribers or the shareholders in the company Uganda have access to this? You cannot begin to call Ugandan third parties. We are not third parties. We are actually parties to this agreement, and we are therefore entitled to have full knowledge or full disclosure of what this agreement is about. Because the way this discussion is going is as though there is the government of Uganda detached from the people of Uganda doing its own thing, and the people are doing their own thing. Essentially, we are being called third parties.
Right.
I do think, in my humble view, that people of Uganda are not third parties to this agreement. They are the principal parties of this agreement.
And principally, even before you go to the general populace,
yes,
the legislature is a part of the government, part of government.
Exactly. So it is ridiculous that you're going to ask members of Parliament to swear, an oath of secrecy.
Well, some of them have said
it's completely unconstitutional. It is unlawful. It's unlawful.
They say they've taken oaths, they won't do anything else.
And I think,
and they are meeting on Monday. They've said they are meeting on Monday to discuss the way forward.
And some of these things I don't know, but there are certain situations that get created out of nothing.
Yes.
Because if you deal with that issue and preempt it, the country will move on, and you'll find that you even do better things without much disturbance. Because at the end of the day, you can explain yourself in terms of whichever decisions are taken.
All right.
So at times it goes to a level that I think would not be warranted.
Mr. Opiyo, Rebecca Kadaga was seen as an acceptable person to all sides. Right now, like you say, she seems to be playing politics, maybe after receiving midnight calls. What kind of verdict would you give at this early hour?
Well, I don't know if she received midnight calls, but
she's been meeting members of the executive in broad daylight.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about midnight calls. But you see,
I want us to be fair on this one, because she quite explained it well. One, the Attorney General had been called to committees and was not appearing. So the Speaker did explain that she called the Attorney General and the other officers before their boss, who is the Prime Minister, for him to explain why he was not following the procedures of Parliament. The rules of Parliament are clear. When a committee calls you, a committee has powers of a High Court. So she wanted to get an explanation from him in terms of why he was defying.
So I don't think she's under pressure from the executive.
No, I just wanted to explain that bit of meeting them, because she explained it, and I think since she's not on this show, and yet it was a public explanation that she made, and I happened to have been there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I wanted to put the record straight and clarify.
We'll have to go for a break. We'll be back after this break.
Which is good.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111.
Broadband Company, more than you expect.
Alive and free.
I wanna be alive and free. I wanna be alive and free.
I wanna be alive and free. I wanna be alive and free. You and me.
Uganda Waraji, the spirit that binds us. Strictly not for sale to persons under 18 years. Please drink responsibly.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight we are reviewing the week. We've been looking at the poll results from Entebbe and the oil debate. Now we're going to talk about Basajja, the compass session. Our guests tonight, Honorable Mike Sebalu, Ugandan representative of the East African Legislative Assembly, and Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL. Honorable Dule, Honorable Mike Sebalu. Still awake, I can see that. Chairman of the NRM, he faced off with PAC, the Public Accounts Committee. He says that if you give me back the City Square and other markets, I'll give you 146 billion shillings in cash.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting development. I think PAC has a point in trying to establish how this kind of money accrued and was paid to someone. I think some explanations definitely need to be made. On the other hand, Basajja Balaba somehow got possession of these markets and used it as a bargaining position. To me, it goes to one thing which we need to address, that those that are entrusted to negotiate or to take decisions on behalf of government need to do so after thorough examination and kind of reviewing of what the implications of their decisions could be. Whoever took this decision has brought this kind of mess
Giving away the City Square,
giving away the markets, took a bad decision, definitely, and the decision is creating problems for the city. It's creating problems for KCCA. So I I actually want to advise that maybe someone needs to review the process of how this decision was arrived at, and someone who happened to have taken it is someone who should be appearing actually before PAC to explain how you could do such a thing, because it was a bad decision and it is ending up being very costly. Because in terms of the law, I think now Basajja Balaba is using the law on his side. I'm in lawful possession. I was given. So the person who did conclude that transaction has a lot of explanation to make to Ugandans. And if there is a way, a process can be put in place to get to review and re-examine for purposes of getting to the crux of the matter, it could be besides the point, because the legal position may not change. But